be traveling to Egypt tonight. And this is just setting the mood a little bit. And again, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Petra. Many of you know who I am. So thank you again for joining us. And we are not going to be playing this music the entire time. Here we go. So just a little bit of what to expect tonight. A few introductions. We'll give you an overview of Egypt and of the Red Sea, the diving there, how to dive it, what to dive, when and where. Egypt topside attractions, what we can see there, what's not to be missed. And we will suggest a few side trips. And then we also include a little bit of COVID update, as well as time for question and answering and the next date for the next webinar. So just a few housekeeping items. We have muted all of you at the end of this presentation. We will encourage you to put your questions into the chat room. And then we are recording this as well. So the recording will probably be published sometime next week. If you're missing anything or you want to share it with a friend, please feel free to do that. A great shout out to Kevin Smith, who is also on the webinar tonight. He has been editing all of our recordings of the last 5 ones that we've had so far. So it will look a lot more professional than if we just posted the recording as it is. So thank you, Kevin, for doing that for us. If you enjoy these webinars and enjoy working with us, we would love some Google reviews or Facebook reviews. Just share this with everybody. We have just recently upped what we can, how many people we can have on these recordings or these webinars. So we can have up to 500 people on here. So please feel free to share this with your friends. Just a little bit of introduction who we are. Those of you who are on this webinar all the time will know this already. Our team here, Arlene, Irene, Julie, Adina, Michelle, and myself. Not all of us are on here tonight, but we have been doing dive travel for almost 25 years, and dive travel is what we do all day long, 5 days a week, the entire year. There is a lot of experience and expertise within our group, and we pretty much cover the entire world of dive travel. We're IATA appointed, which means we have all the proper licenses to issue tickets and control that ourselves as well. And then we handle groups and individuals. And before I forget this, Adina reminded me earlier, make sure, Petra, you mentioned that we have a few Egypt groups in the fall that still have availability. So have a look on our website and you should be able to see that on there. So let's go to Egypt. My biggest challenge was for this presentation that I had way too many pictures. And of course, one of the obligatory picture that you will always have with the Red Sea and Egypt is a camel in front of the pyramids. So I think those of you who have been to Egypt, and I know a few on the call here have been, they will have pictures like this as well. I'm not the only one speaking tonight though. So here's Rick, also on a camel. So Rick, you are on the call. If you could just introduce yourself a little bit and say a few words. My last time in Egypt was 2015. So we thought it was very fitting to bring Rick on because Rick has been there in November of last year. So his experience is very recent. Rick?
Hey, how's everybody? It's good to see some familiar faces. I worked with Flying Sea for a little over 4 years, ending in 2016, and I see familiar faces, so it's great to see everyone. First went to the Red Sea in '88, and then went back in 2005, and then again in November of 20. And so I've seen it over a pretty long period of time. Enjoyed all my trips there, and the last one was fantastic. So I was in the dive industry for a very long time. I'm retired now. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm right now in Orlando, actually, with family. But done a lot of group trips, and the trips that I led to the Red Sea were absolutely fabulous. So everybody enjoyed them.
All right. So there is the world map, and Egypt is right there, Northern Africa, and there's the Red Sea, just so that we orient ourselves a little bit. And the easiest way to get there and the quickest way is with a nonstop flight from New York to Cairo. That would be the easiest way to go and the quickest way. And let's just do a little bit of geography on Egypt. So Egypt is in Northern Africa. It is often called the cradle of civilization. Egypt's motto in their logo actually is where it all began, because history is like 5,000 years old. The population is just over 100 million people, and there is hardly any immigrants in Egypt. Very much, it's all Egyptians, mostly Egyptians that live there. Religion-wise, it's about 90% Muslim and 10% Christians, which are mostly Coptic Christians. And Arabic is the predominant language. English is spoken in most of the tourist areas, and as is Italian and French and German and pretty much all the tourist languages. In 1953, Egypt became a republic. It was a kingdom for about 30 years prior under the influence of the British. And up until 1922, it was actually under English or British rule. And you probably have seen pictures of the British high society on Nile cruises, which obviously happened in the early 20th century. Some of you may know or may even have been affected by the revolution. We may still all remember that. That's hard to believe that that's 10 years ago. And I know we had to actually cancel a trip that was scheduled for April in 2011. It was just not possible to do that. Egypt has been a tourist-oriented country or tourism-oriented country for over 100 years, and about 12% of the workforce works in tourism, and that obviously fluctuates. It has 3,000 kilometers of shoreline. It borders the Mediterranean Sea to the north, and then the Red Sea, obviously. To the south is Sudan. It also has the land bridge between Northern Africa and the Middle East. And the Nile is the longest river in Africa of, I think, over 6,000 kilometers. So that's a little bit of a geography lesson there for you. And now we arrive in Cairo. Rick, this is your picture. You just arrived in Cairo in November. Tell us a little bit about your arrival experience and the time in Cairo that you spent there.
Well, I was very surprised at how nice the new modern airport is, for one thing. It's a tremendous improvement. Sets a little ways out of town, but it's a wonderful airport. I got in the evening, and I went by myself, so I had a private guide, but his driver picked me up, and this is a shot from my hotel that I stayed in there in Cairo, right on the Nile. And I might say that when you set up a trip, and I know Petra does this, but it's a very inexpensive place to travel for the most part. So you want to stay in nice hotels, and there are some very nice ones. So don't try to, save $15 or $20 when you can stay in a really nice place and enjoy that. This is right in the middle of Cairo here. The Cairo Tower, is that what that's called? I think, Petra, in the picture there. So this is looking right over the Nile in the evening, beautiful view. Yeah. So it's a wonderful city. I spent 3 full days there on this trip before going south. I did the land part of the trip first, and then the liveaboard the second week. So I did a week of land tours starting in Cairo.
Now, Cairo is a humongous city. Over 9 million people live there, and I've been I think 2015 was my sixth trip to Egypt, and I've been there on days when you had great clear views, and I've been there on days with sandstorms and smog that you could hardly see anything. So with a humongous city like that in the metropolitan area, it's over 20 million people that live there. I'm sure, Rick, that you notice this too every time you get to Cairo. It's a little bit like a love-hate relationship because it's such a loud city and dirty and chaotic. The traffic, the lines between the lanes really are just there for decoration because people just drive like crazy everywhere. It's the largest city in Africa. But when you wake up in the morning, you can wake up with a view of the Nile, or you wake up with a view of the pyramids. This is when you stay out in Giza. So, Rick, I know that you told me that this time you did not go to the pyramids of Giza, but obviously that's a stop for anybody who comes for the first time or even the second time that you do want to do. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience around the pyramids when you actually did visit them?
Right. Yeah, you definitely want to go there.
Oh, sorry, I want to interrupt you there. I forgot that I had inserted this picture here. This is the company that we work with in Egypt. And they pride themselves, obviously, with COVID now as well. Double sanitation. They follow all the rules that the Egyptian government has set out. Mask wearing, hand sanitizing, cleaning their vehicles. So professional company that we work with there. But go ahead, Rick. This is...
Yeah, and they do enforce COVID there. They have very little. They've had hardly none. They've had hardly any COVID there. But they do enforce it in the sites, in the buildings, in the sites, unless you get off on side streets, of course, in the cities. The locals don't. They don't wear a lot of masks, to be honest. And that's a personal thing, I think, for you. It's not like they police it like some cities do. But getting back to staying in Cairo versus at Giza, for a first trip there, you could do either one, but obviously you definitely want to spend a day in the Giza area. And one thing that's changing right now, actually, as we speak, this year, they were supposed to have opened the Grand Museum, the new museum, in last March, and then COVID stopped the opening of it. So they still have a collection of artifacts and things in the old museum, which you'll see a picture of in a minute. But they're moving everything to the new museum, which is absolutely mind-blowing. You can't believe how big it is, how beautiful the building is. It's amazing, and it's right next to the pyramids. So yeah, there's the old museum. I think it was built in the 1890s. Is that right, Petra? Something like that?
Yeah, quite some time ago. Yeah.
And they're going to turn that building into something else, administration building or something. But this is a picture from November. It's still open. It still has the touch stuff in it, and it still has a lot of things in it. But everything will be moved to the Grand Museum as soon as COVID lets up, and as soon as they decide to open it. When that happens, then that will be at Giza as well. So Giza is going to be probably at least a day, maybe 2-day stay for you, because the museum is huge. And then you want to obviously see the pyramids and the Sphinx and that sort of thing as well. Yeah.
So this is Khan el Khalili Bazaar, which I can't properly pronounce, but this obviously is a picture pre-COVID. This is not exactly what it looks like right now. But part of the Egyptian experience are the markets there. And this sometimes begs the question about how safe is Egypt. Do you want to say a few words on that, Rick?
Well, yeah, I'll always say just two things very quickly. I've led like 130 groups around the world, and you have the question come up no matter where you go. and regardless of the country in many cases. And so there's two questions, one a generic one, and that is when you do a trip overseas to any area that you have any concern about, the key is being with people there that know it, and you stay with those people, and it's all arranged, and you're with them, and they know where to take you, where not. They know how to keep you safe. If someone came to your town, you wouldn't want them just wandering around if they didn't know the city. So if you live in a big city, so they're going to keep you safe, and they know where to go, where not to go. And then the more specific answer for Egypt is the Egyptians very, very favorably oriented towards Canadians and Americans both. They are not at all antagonistic against the West. So I've never had a problem there whatsoever. And they love tourists because they rely on it, and they're hurting right now. So they want to see you there.
And exactly, more so now than ever. And a walk through a bazaar is an interesting experience because obviously only $1, only $1, mister. I mean, they can tell your nationality just by looking at you, and they switch to the next person, it's a euro, and the next person, it's a pound. But it's a game that you need to embrace, or you can be totally turned off by that, and then you're not enjoying this kind of experience. So there's a lot of haggling going on, and it's pretty much on all the tourist sites, I would say, and you just need to embrace it.
Yes, Patrick. I'm sorry. Let me just add real quickly too. One of the things about Egypt that if you haven't been in the Middle East in particular, it's similar in other places. One thing is they are very, very aggressive in terms of hawking their wares and tipping and those types of things. And you just have to know that going in. They're not going to physically abuse you or anything, but you just have to be ready for it and know that it's coming, because it is. And it can be bothering to some people, but your guides will help you through that, and they will help you get muddled through that and work your way through it so that it's not a problem.
Absolutely, yeah. This is in the downtown Cairo area, one of the big mosques there that's located inside Citadel. And this is the step pyramid of Saqqara. And Rick, you were just there this time. What do you know about that area?
Right. The picture on the left is older, obviously, because there's no scaffolding there now. They're pretty much done with it in terms of it being able to be seen without the scaffolding. Picture on the right is, I was there in November. In March of 2020, they finally, after many, many, many years, they finally finished excavating and exploring, the archaeologists, the burial tunnels and down to the main burial chamber inside the step pyramid. And they actually numbered the tickets going in sequentially, and my ticket was like 3,200. So I'm literally like the 3,200th tourist to ever go in that pyramid in over 4,000 years other than archaeologists. So it was very exciting. And you walk down that long path and you get to the end, which is in the middle of the pyramid, and you look down a shaft about 80 feet straight down, and that's where the inner burial chamber was. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Yeah.
And excavations continue to happen pretty much everywhere in Egypt. So this is Egypt, or Cairo is often called the city of minarets. You can see that there, call to prayer at the times when they happen, obviously. But just a couple of words on COVID. So this is from yesterday. Masks technically are mandatory on all the tourist sites. And all the country started a hygiene safety certificate, which every restaurant, every hotel that wants to do business actually has to obtain before they're allowed to open. And you do need to have a negative PCR test to travel to Egypt. And it needs to be taken 72 hours prior to departure. And when you're traveling from North America, they actually allow it for 96 hours because they know that sometimes travel with connections can take longer as well. The certificate must actually be on original paper, so electronic is not sufficient. And just as in comparison to the cases, and obviously these are confirmed cases, people that have been tested, average per 1 million, Egypt is 6.11. Canada 80.22 and USA 218.21. So that gives you a little bit of a comparison. But let's continue and let's leave Cairo. And we're going to board Egypt Air and we want to travel to the Red Sea now. That is about an hour-long flight, depending on where in the Red Sea we're going. And just a little bit of trivia, you can see that the state of California is circled there, which is a little bit smaller than the entire Red Sea. So that is an interesting fact. A little bit of history on Red Sea diving. Hans and his wife Lotte Haas were among these are Austrians, or were Austrians, I should say, were probably the first people diving in the Red Sea. This was actually before Jacques Cousteau got there, a couple of years before, but he obviously was the more famous person diving the Red Sea. But Hans Haas was one of the first people who had or the first person who had taken a picture of a whale shark underwater in the Red Sea in 1949. And then in the 50s, both of them dived the Red Sea. Jacques Cousteau arrived there on the Calypso. He even had this experimental underwater living experiment just off the coast of Sudan. Both of them dived more the southern Red Sea. They never got actually to the northern part of the Red Sea. But let's look at some underwater pictures, shall we? You can say from dolphins to dugong, which is kind of like a sea cow. The Red Sea has it all. And really, that's what it is. And Rick, I would like you to just talk a little bit about your diving experience in the Red Sea, if you could.
The diving there is excellent. It's a lot of beautiful coral, good variety of fishes. You do see large animals at most of the major sites, but not over an abundance of them. We were very lucky at one of the sites. We saw, we had a whale shark, a baby one, about a 15-footer, come in and spent the whole day and night right around our boat. And I actually was taking pictures from the boat at night, from on the boat, shooting down at the water. And I've got some really good pictures of whale sharks circling around the boat. So the oceanic white tips are a very interesting species of shark that you don't see many places. They're quite common at certain sites, particularly at Daedalus Reef in the Red Sea. And they are a shark that you have to know how to interact with in the water. And so they actually give you a small little briefing / course on on the shark itself, and also how to safely dive with it. They're surface sharks, so they're only staying like the top 15 feet of the water. And they're attracted to divers in that top 15 feet, the beginning of your dive, into your dive. And they're very, very curious, extremely curious. And if you don't respond and react properly around them, it can be dangerous. So they have to kind of brief you on how to do that. We saw a lot of them at Daedalus Reef and didn't have any problem at all. And it's quite exciting. I had one swim literally right up to my mask. And, it's one of those situations where you're safe, but it still takes your breath away. So but it was fun. They're beautiful animals, very beautiful. But we didn't see any mantas on the trip. Saw some dolphins, and we tried to find the dugongs and couldn't find them. They're in the shallow, sandy areas.
I've not ever seen them either.
I saw one on my last trip there, but not this trip.
Yeah. And whale sharks can happen, but not as frequently.
Right. Yeah, we got lucky. Mm-hmm.
And then Rex, obviously, this is the Giannis D, which is a little bit on the deep side. But then probably the most famous wreck in the Red Sea is the Thistlegorm. This is an old Bedford truck. The Thistlegorm was a British supply ship in the Second World War that the Germans shot down, and she sits at about 100 feet of water right on the sand, and even people without any wreck diving certification can dive it through the holds. There's still motorcycles on there, and the locomotive sits about 20, 30 feet away from it on the sand. So it's quite well dived, that wreck, and probably will not stay intact the way it is right now for many more years. But I thought it was quite an interesting wreck to dive. There is a couple of wrecks on the Brothers, Big Brother. Most of the wrecks are in the northern Red Sea on the way to the Suez Canal. This is an image of a wreck on the Brothers Islands. And then the reefs, I mean, this picture doesn't want you to make you want to jump in and dive those pinnacles there. I don't know what will. So very healthy area to dive. Swim throughs and walls. Rick, any more to say about the diving?
No, it's excellent diving. It's not, you don't have the marine diversity in terms of invertebrates that you have in Indonesia and some of the places in Southeast Asia. But you do have beautiful reefs and swim throughs, and of course the Antheas like this, like confetti on the reefs. Very nice. It's very good diving. I wouldn't call it the best in the world, but it's very good diving. And the combination of the land tours with the diving makes Egypt an exceptional location to go.
Now, you told me a story about this picture because you guys did a night dive there, right?
Yeah. In 1988, my first trip to the Red Sea, we went waist deep south. And this is Zabergad Island, which is a deserted island. It used to be, I think, a ball site or some kind of mining island by Germans, I believe. And it has a fringing reef. Well, anyway, this picture was actually taken from our liveaboard in 1988. And that night we jumped in from the liveaboard and swam towards this barrier reef right here. And when I jumped in the water, all the turtles, it's a turtle nesting, it's a bird sanctuary and a turtle nesting ground on the island. It's protected. And all the baby turtles had hatched that day and they were swimming out to sea. So I hit the water and there were literally hundreds of baby turtles all around me as I was swimming towards that wall right there. It was just an amazing experience. I've never had it again in over 4,000 dives around the world. So it was just fantastic.
No, that's something you can't really plan, but yeah. So the question then comes how to dive the Red Sea, liveaboard or resort based. And there are some beautiful resorts all along the shoreline of the Red Sea. Sharm el Sheikh on the Sinai Peninsula is like an artificial resort town. And then Hurghada and north of it, El Gouna and Port Gallup and Marsa Alam. So all along there are beautiful resorts, and there is, in our opinion, only very few reasons that you should actually dive the Red Sea with a resort stay. When you look at this, I don't know if you can see that there. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the Brothers Islands in the center of the Red Sea, from coast to the Brothers, is about 60 marine miles. So it's impossible to get there by day boat. And so many really good dive sites you have to do them from a liveaboard. So our answer would be from a liveaboard. The only reason that and my very first trip in 2004, I did resort based because I wanted to explore the whole area. And I didn't have a whole week for diving. So that could be one reason if you don't have enough time, or the minimum number of dives that they usually request is that you have 30 log dives. So if you're a very beginner diver, then you should look at resort based. but liveaboard. So there's many different routes, but I'm just going to show 4 different routes that are quite common. The first one I showed there, sorry, I went a little bit too fast. In the north, from Hurghada, Ras Mohammed, this is where the Thistlegorm is located. So that is called the Reef and Rex, and it's a shorter, it's still 7 nights, but not as much sailing. Then the red one, starting from Hurghada, doing Ras Mohammed and the Thistlegorm, and then going down to the Brothers Islands, is called the Best 5, and that includes, like I said, the Brothers Islands, Thistlegorm, Ras Mohammed. Goes from Hurghada. Then the last one that I highlighted there from Port Gallup, that is simply the best, and that includes the Brothers Islands, Daedalus Reef, and Elphinstone Reef. And then you have the southern Red Sea from Port Gallup down to St. John's Reef. So you can see that all of these are 7 nights. So you got to go to Egypt at least 4 times in order to dive a good chunk of the diveable sites.
Right. The first trip I did, was a longer trip. It was 12 days, I think, and I went all the way from Sharm el-Sheikh down to St. John's. The second time I went, I did 2 weeks. Actually, I had 2 different groups of 2 different weeks. But we did the bottom red one, where we went south down to St. John's, and we did Daedalus as well and Elphinstone. Mm-hmm. And then this last one, this last trip in November, I did the blue route there.
So here are a few pictures of some of the liveaboards. We work with several liveaboard companies in the Red Sea. Rick, which boat were you on when you were there in November last year?
The Elite, the Emperor Elite.
Okay, so the Emperor Divers is one of the longest standing companies in the Red Sea, and we've been working with them. Our first trip with them was in 1999, so for quite over 20 years, and they are probably our preferred one that we work with. But then the salon at the bottom there, that's the Grand Sea Explorer. That's an Emperor Divers cabin, and then that's the Aggressor 3, and forget which boat that is. So lots of topside open deck space. There's the Emperor Elite. You can see that there is a large dive deck and a large dive platform, and I would say most of the liveaboards in the Red Sea are sort of constructed the same way. Yes, there are some differences between them, but in the majority, they are fairly similar, between 120 to 140 feet in length. And like I said, a big dive deck and the dive platform there as well. We can see a little bit of a zodiac there. Rick, do you want to say the kind of diving that the Red Sea usually offers?
Right. For the most part, you'll be diving zodiacs, and they are the rubber zodiacs. So you need to be aware of that. You're not going to find the hard hulls like you do in some parts of the world. As far as skiffs go, you'll be diving the rubber zodiacs. Another thing I might mention, Petra, at this point is that when you take a group there, you have divers go there. Part of the dive association rules in the Red Sea state that your customers, or every diver, has to show that they can properly use a surface signaling device and deploy it from underwater. And so be sure that your customers know that and that they know how to do it, because on the first dive, the checkout dive, they will require that you can prove you can deploy a surface signaling device properly from 15 feet and do a safety stop. So that's part of their requirement. And then one more thing I might mention real quick is on the marine parks, there's no night diving. So there is some night diving, but not at the marine parks. So I think we did one on this last trip.
And the same goes for snorkeling too then. In those areas, there is no snorkeling either. Brothers Islands, Daedalus Reef, Elphinstone. And that is also to do with there can be strong currents in those areas. That is Daedalus Reef right here. That is a military post right on there.
That's where we
This
saw
is
that's where the whale shark was hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Big Brother. So Brothers Islands are two islands, Big Brother and Little Brother. And most liveaboards will stop there. And you can maybe see a couple of liveaboards right here. You can go on the island, and actually the guys of the military welcome a little bit of visitors. And this is not an image from that area, but they will love smoking the shisha with you, the water pipe. So it's an experience that I have not tried, but I know a lot of people with my groups that I've gone with have tried that. And this is pretty much like a pinnacle, a huge island in the middle of nowhere. You can see a big body of water. There's about 4 or 5 dive sites right at Big Brother, and then 2 or 3 at Little Brother. And in high season, this could even look busier than this picture, though. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're standing on 6 liveaboards here. I've been there in October, and there were 10 liveaboards. They somehow still manage to coordinate that not everybody dives on the same dive site at the same time. But the Red Sea for Europeans is like our Cozumel. So there's will be in normal times charter flights from London, from Amsterdam, from Germany, from Switzerland, from Russia. And so it's a popular destination. You will, unless you go in very off season, you will likely not be the only liveaboard there. If you went now, you probably would be. I was once there in January, and we were the only liveaboard on several sites as well. But in high season, very likely not. So when you see this image, to me, that's another reason to be on a liveaboard, because you are not just in the water all day, you are actually on the water for in between surface intervals and at night. And it's one of my favorite ways to dive. Rick, any more thoughts on the diving piece?
No,
Okay.
No, that's good.
All right. So just a couple of things. You may want to go to our website on this. You may have seen some posts on this. Emperor Divers just came out with this promotion. You need to email them, and you can nominate a COVID hero, and the staff will decide every 2 weeks to give away, or to whom to give this away to, a liveaboard for someone who in their terms is deemed a COVID hero. And it's a mix between Red Sea liveaboards and Maldives liveaboards that they're giving away. So just as a little plug in there for Emperor Divers. And so we've dived the Red Sea. Now the topside adventure continues, because we've only seen the pyramids and Cairo so far. So just a little bit geography again. From the Red Sea, we probably want to get to Luxor, either from Hurghada or from Port Galip. And that is a land transfer, depending on from where, between 3 to 6 hours. And it's a drive through the desert. So it's interesting for about half an hour, and then you take a long nap.
Yeah, I might mention, Petra, go ahead and spend the money. Go ahead and spend the money, because it's not much. To be sure, if you take a group, to have buses where each person gets at least 2 seats, so they can stretch out a little bit on that ride. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So what are the options? So a Nile cruise would be definitely one. This is a typical Nile cruiser. It's like a floating hotel. You'll be spending a few nights in Luxor and then cruising south to Aswan. So the Nile cruises happen between Luxor and Aswan, 4 nights one way and 3 nights the other way. And I know, Rick, you've done that. Steigenberger Nile Palace is our favorite hotel in Luxor. This is a view from the Nile, and this is a view to the Nile. So you wake up in the morning or go to bed at night, and you have a view of the Nile. And those little sailboats are called feluccas in Egypt, and they are like a sunset felucca cruise would be a fabulous way to end the day. Then obviously the temples. This is Karnak Temple, a huge complex there, and lots of images you can take, a lot having been reconstructed. That's actually Rick. The hieroglyphs everywhere there is just mind-boggling. Like I said, I've been there 6 times. I can still not retell the stories of what these all mean, but every tour, whether it's one person that we arrange it for or a group, and most of our groups are small groups between 10 and 20 people, will have a private English-speaking Egyptology guide with them. And they are university educated people. They can tell you the history up and down, and yeah, I can't retell it. This is the Colossus of Memnon, Hatshepsut Temple. And this is all on the west bank of of Luxor. This would be the Valley of the Kings. Rick, you were there this past fall.
Right. Well, since I was there first in '88, and even since 2005, when I was there the second time, they're doing so much work all the time on the West Bank. And now you have the Valley of the Kings, you have the Valley of the Queens, you have the Valley of the Nobles, you have the Valley of the Artisans, and they're excavating all the time. So there's so many areas you can visit and tour. And I did the Valley of the Nobles and the Valley of the Artisans on this trip that I had never done before. And I actually was able to go into 2 tombs that have just been excavated, and no tourist have ever been in there before. I was the first tourist to ever go into 2 tombs, one in the Valley of the Nobles and one in the Valley of the Artisans. It was an amazing experience. It looked like it was painted yesterday. It looked like this. It's just unbelievable.
And these paintings are, yes, restored or recovered, but they are 5,000 years old, 4 to 5,000 years old. And I asked Rick actually how come he was able to get these pictures, because I have never been able to take my camera even inside any of these tombs. And that likely has to do with all the guides now being deprived of a lot of their income. And so they will ask you for your camera and for some bakshish, and then it'll go like this. And so you need to have a lot of $1 and $1 bills or $5 Egyptian pounds in your pant pockets to keep paying. And then you end up with pictures like this. This experience, Rick, what was it? What was it like? Tell us.
Oh, it's mind blowing. I mean, there's so much there, and there's constantly. That's one thing about Egypt tourism. It changes all the time because they just keep uncovering things. So you can see new things every time you go. I went to several places. I had never done this. This was on my bucket list, and this is in Luxor. You can get up before light, and you get on a bus on the east side of the Nile River in Luxor, and I mean on the boat, and before light, and they give you coffee, and then you take a boat across to the west side, and they bus you over to this field where they're blowing up these balloons, and it was amazing with the fire and everything in the dark. And then they take you up above the Valley of the Kings and Queens, and you're in the air at sunrise. You can see the picture on the left that was taken right at sunrise as the sun rises over the Nile River. It was a wonderful experience. You can see all of the things from the air at about 500 feet up. So it's an amazing experience. Yeah, I really loved it. It was great.
Yeah, definitely an add-on. So this is the Nile and Aswan. Lots of feluccas there that you can do if you end up being in Aswan. Another excursion possible is to Abu Simbel. This obviously was an image taken a while ago when there were more tourists there. This is a flight from Aswan. Then this is an option that you can do along on the Sinai Peninsula. We call it camel diving. It's not that camels are diving, but you cannot drive there. So you ride on a camel, you do shore diving, and then you stay overnight in a Bedouin camp and take the camel back the next day. That is an option. Well, question is, what's the best time to go? And I'm just looking at our time here too, so I don't want to rush us through it, but I want to cover this as well. So we need to look at the water temperature, which is the pink line there. And the water temperature can get cold, like in the 60s, mid to high 60s in January, February. And then in the summertime, it's the warmest. I've been in the southern Red Sea at 89, almost 90 degrees for water temperature. And I had a double 7 mil in January. So it's a huge temperature difference. And the further south you go in the Red Sea, the warmer it is. The reason why the Red Sea cools down this much is the winds come from the Sinai Peninsula and cool the water down quite substantially throughout the season. But then we also want to look at the topside temperature. And for most of us, sightseeing in like 35, 40 Celsius or over 100 Fahrenheit is not fun. And these are average temperatures, but July and August, I think Irene was there in August once, and in Luxor, the Valley of the Kings, if it's like 104, is just no fun. And even if you go in regular times, like what I've circled there, April to June or September through to November, you can visit the Grand Pyramid, for example, in Giza, which is, you can't be claustrophobic in order to go in there, but there's no ventilation or air conditioning in there. And if it's 80, 85 outside, it's hot inside. So our recommendation typically is between April and June and September to November is sort of the water is warmer and topside is not too hot. So those would be our recommendations.
Right. And if you do, yeah, Petra, if you do March or April or November, like I did November, then if you don't want the cooler water, just go on the southern route. Do the southern route.
Exactly.
And because the water temperature will be, I had 82-degree water in November, first part of November, on this last trip on the southern route. Yeah. Right.
And then, so question also is, how do you want to do the Red Sea? Oh, I've jumped just a little too quickly, but so which order do you want to do? Like liveaboard first, liveaboard last, all the sightseeing, and that really is up to you, because we custom design every trip. I have some preferences here and there, but sometimes it may be, if you want to do a Nile cruise and you want to do a liveaboard, we look that the departures work together and that you're not just adding extra days unnecessarily. So anything is possible. You can do it with a group, like I said, but you can also do it individually, one or two people. We can do that for you as well. Now, what are other options? Rick, you are now, where are you here in this picture?
This is on the Jordan side of the Dead Sea.
So this is not the Red Sea, this is the Dead Sea now in Jordan, exactly.
Right. Opposite Israel.
Yeah, so Jordan is a very common add-on to Egypt, easily connected. This is where, Rick?
Yeah, this is Wadi Rum. This is what they call Mars in Jordan, and it's a desert, actually. Beautiful. You couldn't imagine how beautiful a desert can be. Yeah. There's a lot of Star Wars films were filmed there. The Martian was filmed there. A lot of movies are filmed at Wadi Rum, and you can stay in these igloo houses that are open at night. You can look at the stars at night from your little igloo, and then you can do the camel ride and the Jeep tour of the desert. There. It's great. It's a wonderful experience.
Yeah. So several different options to overnight there. This is south of the most famous city in Jordan, Petra. So Petra, I had to go to Petra a few years ago. And probably the famous part of Petra, just right behind me there, through that little opening in the rock face there, is the iconic picture of Petra, which is the treasury there. I spent all day there, and it's just mind-blowing and fascinating.
It's wonderful. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Right. So that concludes our presentation. We will take a little bit of time for some question and answers. I know we've covered a lot, but we probably have not covered everything. So Irene and Adina have been monitoring the chat. Do you want to throw a couple of questions at us if there are some?
Sure. One of the first questions from Mike, any shots required before going to Egypt?
No, I mean, it's your personal preference. Obviously, we always say you should have your twin recs, have A and B. You should also have your tetanus and typhoid up to date, but that's a general travel rule. That is, nothing is specifically for Egypt.
Another question, can we drink alcohol in Egypt?
Absolutely, yes. The best way to get alcohol is actually after the duty free in the Cairo airport, or after immigration in the Cairo airport. There's a duty free shop, and then people will bring or purchase alcohol there. On Emperor Divers liveaboards, you have wine with dinner included. And the only place that I know of that does not serve alcohol is that Egypt Air flight, that 10-hour flight from New York to Cairo. They do not serve alcohol on board.
Okay. And we have from Jeff, last time we were there, 1995, the women on our trip did not feel comfortable if they found themselves alone. Is this still similar now?
My very first time I was there, I walked through the bazaar by myself, and I would say that was the only time I felt a little uncomfortable. That maybe was not the smartest thing to do, because Egyptian men in general are quite chauvinistic. I'm sorry to say that. So, just use your common sense, dress conservatively, and I have no problem being in Egypt, even traveling there by myself. I would say just use common sense, but no, I didn't feel uncomfortable.
I took 36 people there in 2005, Petra, something like that.
Yeah.
And half of them were women, and we had everything set up with the guides and the local tour companies and everything, and nobody ever had a problem. It was none of the women had any issue whatsoever. So,
of course, it's a personal thing, right? So everyone is different, but I personally think it's not necessary to feel uncomfortable.
I agree with you both. I took my 16-year-old daughter, so two of us.
Right.
Next, is there any diving on the Mediterranean side?
Rick, you went to Alexandria this time, and I know that we've set this up once or twice. There is not a real reliable dive operation there. And in my opinion, it's not worthwhile spending your time to go diving there. Alexandria is interesting, but I wouldn't go diving there.
No, I wouldn't either.
Are there any boats that go for 2 weeks?
Yes, there is occasionally the Royal Evolution is a boat that will do a 2-week. You can also do back-to-back trips. Some boats alternate the routes that they do, and so you do back-to-back, and you do 2 different itineraries.
That would be the way to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Water temperatures, you mentioned it a little bit, but any difference north to south, and what are the water temperatures?
Yes, so it ranges from 68, 66, maybe even in January in the north, to 90 in the south. That was even in early September. So we usually tell water temperatures of when you go, and then you can determine what kind of protection you want to wear.
And how many dives per day on the liveaboards?
That varies a little bit on the routes, because if there is some transition, most traveling will be done at night. But on average, I want to say 3. If you can do a night dive, that would be the 4th dive. It's not a destination for 5 dives a day.
Right. If you're staying in one spot, sometimes you can do 4, but if you're traveling, it's usually 3.
Yeah.
And
a lot of dives can easily be an hour long, if not a little bit more.
And what about snorkeling? Any good sites that you know of?
Yeah, there's some. It depends obviously on the how shallow the reef is. There is definitely snorkeling around Sharm el Sheikh, in the Ras Mohammed area, the sites closer to Hurghada, or would be snorkeling sites. The majority of the true liveaboard routes don't offer great snorkeling.
Okay. Vanessa has never been on a liveaboard, so she's asking, how is the stability of the boat?
So it depends a little bit, again, which time of year you go, whether it's windy or not. The route in the southern Red Sea, St. John's Reef, if you go in September, August, the water is as calm as you can possibly have it. I was out at the Brothers Islands once in January, and it was pretty rocky that the line actually snapped, and then a day later it was calm as glass. So that varies a little bit. I would just say pick a route where there is either not a lot of traveling, or pick the time of year that is not as windy. But the advantage of a liveaboard is that you gain your sea legs after a day or 2. It's better than if you have to get on a boat and back to land, on a boat and back to land. I find you gain your sea legs better. Plus, you're never more than 10 feet away from your staff. So between dives, you can have a nap, you can have a shower, you sit and read. It's a dive style that, yeah, you need to experience once. And I know most people that have done a liveaboard will not go back if it's an area for liveaboards. I don't know, Rick, any comments from your end?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely recommend the liveaboard. We had some rough water on some crossings on this last trip, but it wasn't the first night, so everybody pretty much had their legs about them. And then when you get to the islands, like Brothers, for example, they will find the leeward side of the island that's calm, and they will tie up on that side, so you're diving that side. Yeah.
I mean, if you're very prone to seasickness, maybe the Red Sea wouldn't be the first liveaboard destination that you should try. Unless you pick a very calm time of year, like August and early September.
Anna is asking, are drones allowed?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I do not know that. I think not.
I have the answer.
Okay.
You need a permit from the Minister of Defense, Department of Defense in Egypt. If you don't, and they catch you with the drone, generally it can be 1 to 7 years in prison.
Yeah, you don't want that.
We don't want to bail you out. We don't want to bail anyone out. Carol is asking about copies to show others. I'm assuming she's referring to this presentation. So,
yeah,
Petra, maybe you can tell us again where to see copies.
Yeah, this is being recorded, so sometime next week we will have the edited version up on our YouTube channel. You can also go to our website, flyandSea.com/Traveling Thursdays webinars, and we will have links to it posted there. So absolutely.
Okay. Frankie is mentioning they saw the information regarding PCR testing is requirement, but is that the only one that is accepted? What about antigen tests?
No, at this point, it's a PCR test. Now, obviously, that's right now, and that information can change on a dime. We expect that information about or requirements about testing or vaccination requirements. This year we'll see a lot of changes there. And when you book with us, obviously we will give you the latest information, which I just want to mention this too. Some people have asked us and commented on this is our 6th webinar, and so people know that we're representing many different areas in the world, and that we're booking and rebooking trips for people. We've done that for pretty much a year now, and people have asked us, like, how are you guys doing? And I would say we're doing well. We enjoy at least traveling like this virtually and exploring different destinations. And we try to stay up to date as much as possible on all these requirements, so that when it's time for you and us to be able to travel again, that we know all the requirements, and we would hope that we gain your booking too.
What are the general guidelines for tipping gratuities? Like that.
Yeah. On the liveaboard, pretty straightforward. Actually, on most liveaboards in the Red Sea, it's less than in the Caribbean or in other parts. Usually $150 US dollars for a week is good on a liveaboard. And then the rest is, I mean, we will provide clear guidelines for that. If you're on a tour with a group, we will typically collect a chunk ahead of time, and then the group leader will dish it out so that you don't need to turn around every time to tip. But yeah, everybody, like Egyptians live from tips or bakshish. So it's the driver, it's the porter, it's the woman that gives you the toilet paper at the public toilet that you go to, and you give her a quarter in conversion. So a lot, but we will give the detailed guidelines with our tour information.
As a woman traveling, do I need to cover my knees and shoulders?
That depends on where you are. So if you're in a very conservative area, like a Nubian village in the southern Egyptian part, yes, it would be respectful to do that. Cairo, nope. It's a very cosmopolitan area. The beach areas, no, not whatsoever. If you go and visit a mosque. Absolutely, and they have those there. I would just to not attract unwarranted comments and glares, just be careful how I dress in areas where there's a lot of people.
Yeah, I would just comfortable but conservative. Comfortable but conservative. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also, with a lot of sun, covering up with lightweight clothing, cotton, linen is actually helpful there as well.
During a liveaboard trip, are there any land visits?
Other than going ashore at the Brothers Islands, no, there is really nowhere where you would stop. It's all about diving.
You can also go to the lighthouse on Daedalus Reef too.
Right, yeah.
Here's a good question. What is the best month to see large marine life?
Depends a little bit. I would say sharks are quite September, October, around Brothers, Daedalus, Elphinstone, but I've seen a guitar shark around Brothers Islands in January. Mantas more so in April, May, but there isn't. We actually have a chart that we could send people if they're asked for it, of marine sightings. Emperor Divers keeps track of that a little bit, but there isn't a specific time like in other parts of the world where you go, oh, this is the whale shark time, or this is the hammerhead time.
With respect to the sightseeing tours, I'm assuming pyramids and places like that, are they rushed, or is there time for photos?
Oh, absolutely time for photos. Yeah, because it's it's your tour. And especially if you are going not with a group, but just with yourself, you can take as much time there as you want. But even with the group, they customize the trip. The group usually calls the shots. There's also usually with the sightseeing tours, there will be some visits to like a papyrus factory or an alabaster area. I've been to a perfume factory, a carpet making place. So a lot of that is between you and the guide to discuss. But yeah, absolutely time for it. We'll end it here then. Thank you, Rick, for your time tonight and for everyone showing up. You can see here on the screen that in 2 weeks' time, we will actually travel to Indonesia. North Sulawesi, Lembe, and Murex resorts, which offer the well-known Passport to Paradise program and other options. So we will actually, with the time difference, it will be daylight when we see them. And we're looking forward to presenting that area of the world to you. So thank you very much, everyone, for showing up tonight. We appreciate you, and we appreciate your support. Thank you.